Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we've got an episode of Sniper Sunday and a weapons mastery. We'll be mastering the QBU-88 designated marksman rifle. This is an interesting weapon and one of the last on the list to master for my DMRs. And if you're the kind of person who likes to pore over the sim-thick stats at first glance, you might look at the QBU-88 and go, oh my god, this rifle is amazing. Everything about it is perfect. It's better than every other DMR out there. And you might be right. At first glance, that is, until you look at the magazine capacity of 10 rounds. Now, when you have an average requirement of shooting your enemy 3 times before they die, 10 rounds just doesn't seem like enough. And when the QBU-88 is competing against other DMRs that have magazine capacities of 15, 20, and even 25, it seems weird that this one would just get shorted so badly with only 10 rounds. Nonetheless, I do manage to get the 500 kill mastery with this rifle, as it does still shoot bullets and you can still get kills in TDM pretty much no matter what gun you're running. It's just a matter of whether or not the gun is really worthwhile to run. And sometimes when I'm looking at a weapon and thinking, oh, this gun sucks, well, it usually only sucks because of the situation that we're in. Battlefield is a game where there's lots of opponents that you have to deal with all the time, spontaneously. You can't necessarily afford to be stuck in long reload animations all the time. There's going to be enemies popping out from behind every corner. Enemies are going to be spawning on the guys that you're shooting. It still happens. There's just going to be a lot of chaotic combat situations, and you have to be ready for them. If I was only up against one opponent or a very small squad of opponents and I could engage one at a time, then 10 rounds would be perfectly fine. 10 rounds, however, in its current state is barely enough, and I would say pretty much inadequate to deal with 2 targets on average. You have to factor in that you're probably going to be missing a bunch of your shots, and then it takes at least 3 shots to take down an opponent. You can't miss any more than 4 shots when engaging 2 enemies, and that's a pretty tall order even in Battlefield. I don't care how good your accuracy is, when you have a semi-automatic weapon and your targets are moving, you're going to start missing shots very quickly. Now, of course, I'm not factoring in the 2-shot kill where you mix a headshot into the equation, but when you have a moving target, chances are you're not going to be aiming at the head most of the time. You're going to need to land shots, and aiming center mass when a target is sprinting by is usually the safest option. If you do have time though, target stationary at range, then you can aim for the head, but don't be surprised if your target starts running after you take your first shot, and you have to follow it up with a body shot if you're lucky. Now, of course, we have to worry about this little thing called weapon balance, and as I mentioned before, the stats on the QBU-88 are amazing. Let's take a look at them from simthick.com. You'll notice it has an incredibly fast muzzle velocity of 670 meters per second, faster than any other DMR in the game. It also has the second fastest rate of fire of 310 rounds per minute, only bested by the SKS and only by a little, so it's got a very fast rate of fire, which seems like a weird pairing with such a small magazine. It means you're going to run out of bullets in no time at all if you start spam firing. And then we also have the second lowest vertical recoil, which is something that you should absolutely be concerned about with DMRs. It controls the amount of spam fire you can do. If you have high vertical recoil, it means you're going to have to do more recoil compensation, probably take more time in between each shot just so you can get back on target. So very low recoil, which means this gun really is set up well to do a bunch of accurate spam firing. You just don't really have a good magazine for it. There's a lot of stats on this gun that kind of seem to compete and not work well together, if that makes sense. If the weapon was designed for one specific type of combat, I'm at a loss to try and figure out what it is. It's got great muzzle velocity, so that's good for long range targets. Then it's got decent hipfire accuracy as well, because it's a bullpup design, so that's kind of weird. So you got close quarter and long range capabilities there, a very small magazine, shitty reload speed. I just don't really know what to think of this weapon overall. I'd say it's one of the best 1v1 DMRs you can get in the game, but since that situation rarely applies in Battlefield, it's kind of hard to find a situation that really caters to the QBU-88. I found it very hard to be in the front lines with this weapon, and my playstyle basically just evolved into shoot at one target, get some hits, either kill them, then immediately reload. There was no going for the second target unless they were just directly in my line of sight, and I had a pretty good chance of taking them out, or there was a lot of friendlies nearby that I could count on absorbing some of the return fire. So once I figured out I couldn't be a pusher, I couldn't be in the front lines, I couldn't play strongly with this weapon, which is hard for me to adapt to, but eventually I get around to that style of play, I started playing some rush rounds where I really could either play defensively, or if I was playing on the attacking side, I would support my teammates. And that's why I played a little bit of support for a second there, just to drop ammo boxes and do stuff to back them up. You can run the DMR on any class. Recon though, for the sniper class, it was being helpful using the spawn beacon when on the attacker side. And when on the defender side, always using a tugs to show my teammates where the enemy was attacking from, provided that they're actually looking at the minimap. Now it's important to remember that when you're running with a weapon that cannot overwhelm a large number of enemies at once, you need to be right next to cover to dive back behind it. Now, it's a good rule of thumb just to be behind cover or near cover with any weapon, but particularly important with this weapon. You just can't do a lot of exploration, and you can't really adapt it to a situation where you do need to kill a lot of enemies at once. If 3 guys came around the corner, I could probably run that scenario 10, 20 times and not kill all of them using this weapon. It's just really not that effective. So make yourself hard to be seen. Don't put yourself in the front lines unless you absolutely have to. Run with a powerful sidearm like a G18 to deal with close quarter threats, and get used to using it, because if anybody gets close up, you might be better off just switching to your sidearm rather than trying to engage with this weapon. You can run with a laser sight on here if you would really like to, because the gun does have decent hipfire accuracy, and if you want to use it as sort of a twitch reflex weapon, a reactionary gun in CQB, it can be effective for that. Now the setup I was running with this weapon was an angled foregrip and heavy barrel. The angled foregrip to reduce the vertical recoil, and the heavy barrel to give me slightly better accuracy, but also increase the vertical recoil. It's not something that I want, but the angled foregrip does help with that situation a bit. The base accuracy on this gun isn't phenomenal, so the heavy barrel does help with that. As for optics, I transition between a coyote sight, a 3x sight, and a 4x sight, and even the FLIR optic when people were throwing tons of smoke all over the place. You can pretty much run with whatever optic you prefer, but I mostly ran with a 4x sight just to try and maximize my distance whenever possible. I find that depending on the sight I'm running, I'd pretty much just adapt my gameplay to that. Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for this Sniper Sunday weapon mastery. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to let me know in the comments which weapon you would like me to master next. As always, I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing out.